the Dexcom Stelo versus the Lingo by Abbott. So last year, 2024, the very first two over-the-counter continuous glucose monitors hit the market, and Julene Montgomery, my friend and colleague, and I decided that for this episode, we were going to sit down to share everything we know about them in a way that would help you decide which one would be best for you, right? We're going to lay out all the pros and cons, what we like and don't like about each one of them. But keep in mind that technology like this changes so rapidly that by the time this even comes out, there might be updates to their apps, their software. So it's always best to do your own research to make sure things haven't changed since we recorded this. But little background, Julene, my friend and colleague, is a pre-diabetes nutrition coach. She's based in Portland, Oregon. She's also the founder of Sugar Drop RX Masterclass, which helps people improve their pre-diabetes. She and I have both been doing this type of work for some time and have both been using continuous glucose monitors ourselves and with our patients for a number of years. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Julene comparing the Stelo and the Lingo. Hey, Julene.
Hey, Karen.
Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome.
So Stelo versus Lingo. That's what we're covering today. Everything Stelo versus Lingo. And I'm glad you're joining me today because as we're going to get into, I've used a lot of different CGMs and so have you, but you have been really comparing the Stelo and the Lingo recently. So I'm excited to get your total comprehensive review of both of them.
Yeah, no, it's super exciting since they're, the two major CGMs that are available over the counter now.
Yeah.
And they both have great, pros and cons. So it's good to know about both of them.
I mean, so spoiler alert, I would think I think you and I could probably mesh all the features of the two of them and come up with the perfect CGM.
For sure.
But nobody's asking us yet for our opinion. So hopefully for the people listening, I'm hoping that after you listen to this conversation, it will give you an idea of maybe not which is the best CGM, but which is the best one for you, for your needs. Would you agree?
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we get into this, don't worry, I'm not going to waste a lot of time with chit chat. I want to get into the comparison, but I think before you listen to my opinion, Julene's opinion, it might help to hear where we're coming from. So you know where our opinion is coming from, the lens that we're looking through. And so I know I'll start with me, and I know people who've listened to my podcast before know a little bit about my background, but I have used personally, because I have, ever since I went through menopause, my blood sugar went up into the pre-diabetes range, like it does in everybody else in my family. And so I've used them personally. I started off years ago with the Freestyle Libre 14-day, and then leapfrog to the Freestyle 3. And then I've used the Dexcom Stelo. And I've supported all of those CGMs in addition to the Libre 2, and I've supported the Dexcom G6 and G7. But I personally haven't used the Lingo or supported it for reasons that we'll get to later on. So I've used those personally, and I've supported my patients and my groups on those. And that's where I'm coming from, my personal use and my ability to view that data, have my patients share it with me so I can support them. So how about you? What have you used and where are you coming from through this?
Yeah. So, similar to you, a few years ago, my blood sugar as well, kind of in perimenopause phase, my blood sugar started to get into the pre-diabetes range. And being in the work that I am, I, quickly turned to using a CGM. And so for me, I only used the Freestyle Libre up until recently. So Dexcom Stelo has been my entry point into Dexcom in general. My experience was really only with Libre 2 and Libre 3. And really primarily because Dexcom was not covered by my insurance and was so darn expensive. Excuse me, even though I heard that it was a great CGM, my experience was just with Libre.
Yeah, same with me.
Yeah. And so it's been really interesting, kind of seeing, how they've changed. And I think that is one of the exciting things about both Stelo and Lingo is that they're designed really for people with prediabetes. I
Mhm.
mean, people with diabetes could use the Stelo, and we can, talk more about the Lingo. But I really think Abbott designed Lingo to be for people with prediabetes and
Yeah.
not for diabetes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And uh I've worked with people and I've seen people, when I'm frequenting like Facebook groups and user forums to see what other people are using. I've seen people with type 2 diabetes and type 1 using those over the counter ones because they haven't used them before. And they
yeah,
thought, I'm just going to try an over the counter before I venture into getting a prescription.
yeah.
So people,
And
lots of different
it
people
is
are.
great. I think it's great for that entry point. I mean, I wasn't sure about Dexcom. I mean, I know like Libre, has all sorts of bells and whistles, particularly for, when people are taking insulin,
Mhm.
because that can be a dangerous situation. If your blood sugar gets too low, it
Yeah.
has, the bells and whistles to
The
alert you,
alarms.
sometimes in
Yeah.
the
So
middle
does
of the night,
Dexcom.
that your blood sugar is low. Um, and so it's great for that, but also can be a little scary, when you first start using it. And if you're not on insulin and it's going off in the middle of the night and telling you that your blood sugar is low, it can be, a little freaky.
Yeah.
But
So for listeners who haven't used a CGM before, um, what Julian's talking about is the prescription CGMs like the Freestyle Libre and the Dexcom G7, G6. They come with alarms that will go off if your blood sugar is too high or too low. And some you can't shut off, of course.
yes.
Hmm.
And as I think
They're
we both
alarming.
know, like when we have, clients or patients who use them, that's usually the first thing that we tell them about if they're on the prescription model, that here's how you turn it off.
There's how to turn them off if they're not needed because they are lifesavers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're taking insulin, then absolutely you need to keep them on.
Yeah.
But if you're not, then it's really not needed. But
Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's talk about it. What do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about the Stella or the Lingo?
let's start with Stelo. I mean,
Okay.
Stelo's. I think Stelo is. It's really more of the basic of the two. It's simpler
Hmm.
of the two. So I think it's a great entry point for people who are curious about CGMs, who've maybe never used a CGM before. It's really easy to get, to apply, and to use. It's just a really
Great.
simple approach. So yeah,
Yeah. And so for starters, the price point on the Stelo is what?
yes.
Stelo is what? It's like $99 for a month.
For a month, for 2, yes, which is
Yes.
actually a little bit more expensive than the Lingo, and we can talk more about pricing.
Mhm.
But, yeah, I mean, Stelo, pretty affordable. I mean, when I was, getting a prescription for the Libre 3, I would still have, a copay, and I think my copay ended up being 45, $50. So the over
For
the
the
counter
month.
option is, yeah, per sensor. So the over the counter option is about the same, for many people who
Right.
have
Yeah.
insurance and who have a copay. So,
Yeah. And it actually, I don't use insurance. That's actually the cash price of a Freestyle Libre. When I go to my local, like Kroger's pharmacy with no prescription, with no insurance coverage, the cash pay is $37.50 for a Freestyle Libre
interesting.
for
Okay.
one sensor. So that would be, just under $80 for the month of
Yeah.
Freestyle Libre.
Yeah.
So the Stella is $99 for two. So for those listening, it's for two sensors, and each sensor is supposed to last 15 days.
Correct.
So when they say per month, you can use them. You could use it for 2 weeks in October, save another one for 2 weeks in November.
Absolutely, which is what a lot of people do,
Hmm.
just, if you don't have to wear it, sometimes it's nice to just wear it for a couple of weeks, see how things go. You learn so much.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a while to let that all sink in, and then you try it again
Yeah.
in a month or so, or a couple of weeks later.
And so the app, what about the data management for the Stelo?
Yeah, so the Stelo data management, I think, is really, I mean, it's very simple compared to Lingo. Um, but I like that about it, right? Because it's one graph,
Mhm.
so you just kind of hop in there and I the thing I love on Stelo is sort of being able to, if you look at what your blood sugar is and you're like, oh, what was it a couple hours ago? Just, you pressing your finger to the screen and pushing the line back and seeing, what your blood sugar
Mhm.
was a couple hours ago. Because it's not obvious when you just look at the graph what it
Right.
was.
But it's
Uh,
simple and intuitive touch screen to move it,
yeah,
which is nice.
yeah, really easy to go back. And yeah, I mean, I think it's everything on the Stelo interface is very straightforward. It's an easy graph. It's easy to navigate. The app in general, um, it has the learn area at the bottom, which gives some I think beginner basic information on nutrition
Mhm.
and how CGM works. So
And a
it's
few things about different things that affect your blood sugar. I think they have little bits
exactly,
about exercise and
yeah, yeah, so easy. And, and Stelo does allow you can adjust your target range,
Mhm.
so which is where it's, different from Lingo that, you can either adjust it to, 70 to 140 milligrams per deciliter or 70 to 180, which is really more the recommendation if you have diabetes.
Mhm.
So, um, it's, to your point earlier, people can use it if they have diabetes. They can still use Stelo.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know how Stelo compares to like the Dexcom G7. Is it a simplified version, I assume?
Personally haven't used the app, the G7 app,
Okay.
but I know on the back end, like one thing we'll go into next is the like the Stelo app is very simple, which means it has less functionality. Like it's hard to look at your old data. You can log meals very easily in the Stelo app. You
Yeah.
just go in and type in, had a turkey sandwich and chips and slept great, slept like crap.
Right.
That's easy, but you don't see any of that on the Stelo app.
Right. Right.
So the similarity that it has with the other Dexcom, like the G7, is that it has the back end. Stelo has the back end of Dexcom Clarity.
Right. Right, which is really, it's kind of a pro and a con of Stelo. It's because Clarity offers this great backend that you can, really dive into the data more, and
Mhm.
most importantly, you can connect with a healthcare practitioner. But you have to have a separate app, to be able to
Yeah.
do which as you know in dealing with patients it can be confusing setting that up initially.
Mhm.
Once you do, it's all great, and for a practitioner to be able to see your clients blood sugar data, it's
Mhm.
fantastic.
Yeah.
It's really easy to log in
Yeah.
and see all that. um,
Yeah.
but you got to do it outside the app, right? So
Yeah. And so what Julian's talking about is when we talk, I realize I brought up Clarity and not everyone knows what Clarity is. So when you have the app on your phone for the Dexcom Stelo and you're just seeing in the moment what your blood sugar is and what it was 3 hours ago, it's simple, it's easy to navigate because of its simplicity. But what we talk about the back end is when you put a different app on your phone, another app, which is Dexcom Clarity, then it allows you to access to go, Dexcom Clarity is another free program, a free app that Dexcom produces that you put it on your phone and all of your data from your Stelo feeds into Clarity. And you can go onto a desktop platform and print out reports, look at all your old data, and of course, what Julian's talking about, you can share it with your provider. So you can share it with like someone like Julene and I, so we can, support you. Um, yeah. So have you used Clarity very much when you were using the Stelo?
Yes. So, pretty much as soon as it came out as being over the counter, that really opened things up for me and my clients. And it's great. I mean, every client who I've had that uses Stelo will connect with me, will share their
Right.
data so that I can
Right.
take a look. And, as we go through, my program with them, which is typically a 3-month program, I can see exactly what's going on. And it's just such a great add-on to making lifestyle and habit changes, with your diet. So it's just such a it's such a helpful tool,
Yeah.
such a learning tool.
So you said you're having trouble with like it's another thing to get them connected on Clarity. So how are you going through that? What are the hiccups that people are having getting connected to Clarity?
Well, probably the main one, as you remember, is having the same username and password when you sign up for Stelo,
Mhm.
that you use the same username and password for Clarity.
Right.
And which is, kind of, I think most people think that when they're signing up for a new app, you want to use a different password, right?
Mhm.
So it's natural for people to
Mhm.
think, oh, different app, different passwords. So um, I mean, I kind of tell people about it before they do it, so that
Yes.
they, see it come.
Remember your username and password, please.
And then,
Yeah.
and then the next meeting, we usually go through it again. And it's actually been pretty straightforward. It hasn't been too bad.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so it's once getting over that hurdle, then
Yeah.
it's all smooth sailing from there.
Because it wasn't obvious. Like if there's nowhere on Stella that says, "Hey, you could also use Clarity if you want to." Because that's something that we just figured out. I wonder if this works with Clarity, and we just fished around and figured it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not on the front of the package.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really is something that I wonder if Dexcom is going to rethink, in the longer term, if they're gonna make it so that people can have access to more, because having access to only 24 hours of data, it is a big con for the Stelo.
Mhm.
Once 24 hours is up, your data is
Mhm.
it's no longer there.
Yeah. But to
Um,
be clear for the listener, it's always in Clarity. You
it's
can
always
always go in Clarity and see everything. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, so it's one of those things with Stella where it's a pro and a con, because they
Mhm.
have Clarity as that back end. It's this, fantastic analytical tool that allows you to go, much deeper, and of course to connect to a healthcare practitioner.
Mhm.
But you have to, you know, create a new account on a different app to
Yeah.
be able to get to that. So, you know, not not a huge con, but a little bit of
Yeah.
a hit there.
And one thing that I've seen people get frustrated about or have questions about is, there's always it's the app. It's how much is the app doing for you? And one thing that I've noticed that Stelo does, and I'm curious what you think, is it will tell you, oh, it'll like ping you and say, you have a glucose spike happening now.
Yes.
And I've heard people say, and I've seen this, that like you can be eating something and your blood sugar goes up to 110, and they'll say you have a glucose spike, and people think, oh gosh, is 110 mgs per deciliter a spike? And then it's about defining our terms. And is that bad?
Yes. Yes. No, that's a really good point. I mean, and that's actually one of the first things that I tell clients when I work with them, is that when you eat food, your blood sugar is going to spike. That is natural for that to happen. It's normal. It's how far it spikes up and how long it stays there. It's is
Yeah.
the bigger issue. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think that can, kind of freak people out. And it's something that I think as practitioners we have to realize. We're so used to talking these terms. When somebody first gets a CGM, they have no idea really what it's going to show them. And so, yeah, the whole idea of a spike, and even seeing on the graph this line go up, it can be a little scary at first, a little intimidating.
Yeah.
Um, so there
Because
is, yeah,
we don't know what's normal, what is healthy, what's okay, what's not okay.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's that initial kind of, um, laying the foundation
Mhm.
conversation that kind of has
Yeah.
to take place for people to get used to what's going to happen.
Yeah. And how much do you think, so if someone's a complete beginner and they don't have background in that, and they're like, I just want to look at my blood sugar and I'm going to use this Stelo without all that background, do you think it's helpful to just use that?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. And you know, as we'll get into, I think it's a better option than Lingo in terms of that first,
For the beginner?
for the beginner. Yeah, because it is such a simple interface
Hmm.
and it doesn't have a lot of the bells and whistles that
Hmm.
Lingo has, but I think that's a good thing when someone's first starting out.
Right.
For most people, they think of a continuous glucose monitor as something that only diabetics wear.
Hmm.
So just putting these things on is scary for a lot of people. So I think, and that's, something else that we can talk about is, applying
Oh,
Stelo.
yeah.
So, um, it's very easy, right? It's a one-piece applicator.
Hmm.
So it's just taking it out of the box, pressing it, pushing the little button, and it's on.
Yeah.
Um, that can still be intimidating for people because it does have a little filament, that goes
Hmm.
into it. It's not painful for most people. It's not,
But it
it's,
seems like it should be.
yeah,
It
yeah,
seems like it should be. When you look, every time I've helped people install their first sensor on a Zoom call. So we're doing it and they're like, is that what's going into me? I'm like, it's not going to hurt. There's so much doubt.
yes, I know.
Now, one downside that I wonder about, what you think with the Stelo, is it's easy to install, but then they have that little that ring of adhesive that goes around
Cover
the edges
patch.
of it.
Yeah.
And in theory, that's not hard, but getting that on around without it sticking to other things on the back of the arm
Is
is
probably the hardest
tricky.
part. That's the
It
hardest part of
is.
applying it. Yeah. Yeah. It's for me, that's something that I always have my husband put it on.
Yeah.
So it's like
I've
if you
done it myself a couple of, like, I think I did my first application. I did it live and I recorded it and I put it on YouTube because
yeah.
sometimes I think it's helpful for someone else to see, like someone like me who's used CGMs for a long time, to open, oh, here it is. This is new, and to fumble through and still have success.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and so I managed somehow to get that on just using, like what I'm doing now, watching myself on the screen, and
Right.
I succeeded. So
All
for
right.
those of you listening, it is a challenge, but you can do it. But I think it is helpful to have another person to put that part on for you.
Yeah. Now do the other Dexcom CGMs come with their own cover patch like Stelo does?
I'm not sure, but I
Okay.
think they do. I would be
Um,
surprised because I don't know is the answer.
because it is nice that and I assume that Stelo kind of requires it. They want you to have the cover patch, which is different from Lingo, actually.
It's a
Lingo.
little extra security. I had used one intentionally. I didn't use the cover patch on one.
Oh, really? And it stayed on okay.
It stayed on me, but as we know, them staying on has a lot to do with, well, one, not knocking it, but also good skin prep. And I have fairly dry skin. Some people have more oily skin and they sweat more. And of course, oil and grease is the enemy of adhesive.
Yeah.
And how hairy your arm is. And so that's not a hairy area for me. I have fairly dry skin. I don't
Yeah.
use an overpatch on anything.
Huh.
So given all that, I had no problem keeping it on without the little extra ring of adhesive.
Okay. Interesting.
Um,
And you never found that like your clothing caught on it or anything like that?
no,
Huh?
no.
Interesting.
But it was also the summertime. I wasn't wearing sleeves. I
Yeah.
would always wear it, but I just, for you and people like you and I'm I want to see what can go wrong. I've done all sorts of things to foil my CGM use because I needed to experiment it, because I wanted to experience the problem before my patient experienced the problem, so I could say, I know exactly what you're going through and this is
Yeah.
how you fix it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And of course there is for those who are, you know, really into, I don't know, sports where it is going to
Mhm.
get caught. There's,
For sure.
different cover patches you can get off Amazon that are even kind of more rugged and more
Yes,
stylish. You know, you can get different colors and things
that's
like that.
right. That's right.
Like that.
So we've got the price, we've got putting it on, we've got data management, support. Oh,
Support.
support.
Support. Another con of Stelo, unfortunately, is, you know, the dreaded chatbot
The
support.
dreaded chatbot.
Um,
Yeah. Which
yeah,
has changed,
well, I'm sorry.
which has changed
Oh, it
recently.
has. Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
know
So
that.
let's start with how it has been, because Stelo launched this with no actual customer service. It was just a chatbot on their website.
And
And you
so,
could, like if something went wrong, you would just go to the chatbot. You had to have the serial number for your sensor
right,
ready.
right.
So that was key. And enter that, and they would, and if all went well, then they would send you a replacement, but you had to use the dreaded chatbot.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
wasn't a human. But no, just I think maybe 4 weeks ago, they
Oh,
have a phone number.
well, they do. Okay. Well,
Yep,
that's
I have
good.
used it. Some patients have used it. And sometimes the person says, have you used the chatbot? Why don't you enter that into the chatbot? And you enter the chatbot. They go, great, that worked. Can I do anything? You said sometimes the human is walking you through going through the chatbot, but sometimes a human being is just all you need. And so
Yes, yes.
they are
No,
rectifying that.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. And, you know, and that's interesting because I do feel like in a lot of ways, Dexcom, they put this together quickly,
Mm,
in launching Stelo. I think they did. They still did a great job, you know, I think it's still they you know, and again, I don't have experience with, other Dexcom CGMs, but, from what I had heard, you know, while I was using the Libre is everyone said Dexcom was great. I always
mhm.
wanted to get it because I couldn't afford it.
Right.
But you know, they had that kind of that strength going into it is their sensors are great. And they
And their
quickly
tech is great. Generally, this is all that Dexcom does, and Abbott has a whole bunch of stuff and a
right,
CGM. So
right.
their tech has always been better, but you and me, both of us are assuming they kind of threw that out there quickly because they did it before putting customer service. But,
Right.
it's possible they thought maybe we can get away with just a chatbot.
Huh?
And
Yeah, me too.
maybe that was intentional. I remember when I talked to them at Fancy this year, they said that also the other thing with Dexcom Stelo is it only gives you updates every 15 minutes,
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
where, the actual CGM is taking a reading every like 5 minutes, I think, but it waits 15 minutes to give you the update. And they were intentional with that. They said they were trying to reduce data fatigue.
Oh, interesting.
But
Yeah.
I think overall, my feeling with people is they've just increased annoyance
Yeah.
with people because they want the data.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and particularly, you know, something that you know, people often do with a CGM to and I know these are supposedly self-calibrating, but sometimes people will start getting wacky readings, and you know, I'll recommend to clients to do a glucose meter
Mhm.
check, you know, so do a finger
Yeah,
prick
finger stick.
and take a reading. And if you're doing that, then it's really off,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
you know, from if it's, you know, only updating every 15 minutes.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, a downside. The good news is that I do think, and I really feel like since using the Stelo compared to the Libre, I did used to have to calibrate it at least
Mhm.
in my head because it was off. It could
Mhm.
be off by 5 or 10 points. Um, Whereas I have not found that to be the case with Stelo. So even though
Okay.
it's not updating as quickly, I do find it to be more accurate than at
Okay.
least the Libre 3 was.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Dexcom Stelo.
Dexcom
We like
Stelo.
it. It's simple, good for beginners,
Yeah.
$99 for 2 sensors.
And I think probably the most important thing about Stelo
Mhm.
is that it works on both iPhone and
And
Android.
Android.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
which is the deal killer for a lot of people with
Yeah.
the Lingo. If
Mhm.
if they have an Android, then it's going to be the Stelo, um, which
Yeah.
again, trade-offs with each,
Trade-offs.
but
So
Stelo is definitely applicable to just a much wider market
Mhm.
because of
So
that.
pros, Apple and Android,
Yeah, Apple and Android.
um,
I would
can
say
share your
easy
can share your
application.
data.
Yeah, can share your data, and really simple application. Simple application, to your arm, but also simple
Simple
app
interface.
interface.
Yeah.
Just easy to get up to speed, particularly for a beginner. I think
Mhm.
it's just not overwhelming.
Right.
There's one graph to look at, easy to grasp what's going on, and to start, tracking your blood sugar.
Okay. Okay, great. Downsides, customer service started off
Customer
very
service,
sketchy, getting better. Um,
yeah.
okay,
Have the two
and a little more
apps,
expensive.
a little more expensive, and having to buy two sensors at once. So as
Having
we'll
to buy 2 sensors at once, so we'll compare that to Lingo. All
yeah.
right. Well, let's talk about Lingo from Abbott.
Yeah. So kind of first things first. Yeah, you can get the Lingo. You can buy Lingo, one Lingo sensor. So you don't have to buy if you're really new to the market and you're like, I just want to try this out. I really don't want to.
Mhm.
You can buy one for $49, um, for the Lingo. So for some people, that's really enticing. That's going to get them over the hump of being afraid to try this thing that they think only diabetics use. Oh, I'll just get one, try it
Mhm.
out. So
It's a
easy.
lower bar to entry.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's easy. Yeah. Applying the Lingo, little more difficult. Little more difficult. So
How is it
Lingo.
different than a Libre, a Freestyle Libre?
Well, yeah, similar in that it has the two, which I actually have one around here somewhere.
Yeah, it's
Um,
one of
the
these
two
things. Is
pieces,
it like
yeah,
this?
yep, exactly. So it still has that. Yep. So you still
So
have
open
to
it up.
put it together, pull the sensor off,
Oh, you
and
have to
then,
put it together.
yeah, you have to.
So it's
You
like the
right,
old Freestyle Libre 14 days.
say that again.
It's like a freestyle. So the old
Yes.
Freestyle Libres, the 14 days, they would come as 2 things that you would put together, like
Yep.
push down on a table.
Exactly right.
It's
Same
like that.
same exact thing.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
same exact thing,
So more
which is
plastic.
really intimidating for people, when it's their first time. It's hard enough just figuring out, where to put it on their arm, and
Right.
to, get prepared for this thing that they think is gonna hurt. But, having the 2 pieces, a little bit of a downside. Not a
Yeah.
huge deal, not
Yes.
probably not a deal breaker for the majority of people, but I would call it a con.
Okay.
um, that it's not quite as easy as the Stelo.
Mhm.
So, um, but once it's on, I would say it is no more, no less painful than the Stelo in terms
Right.
of, how it feels. It's, very, similar filament. I will say the size of the Lingo, the sensor itself, is a little bit bigger than Stelo.
Oh, is it? They've
Uh-huh.
used a bigger.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
So it's bigger. Is it bigger than the old Freestyle Libres?
It's bigger than the Freestyle Libres. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably about 25% bigger
Okay.
than the Stelo. So,
Which
again,
is funny because the Freestyle Libre is actually the other Abbott CGMs are the smallest ones on the market.
it's
They're
the
much
ones on the
smaller
market. Yeah, so I was really
They've
surprised
gone
that they
big.
didn't use that same, kind of
Mhm.
style and model. But yeah,
And you
strangely.
didn't I forgot to ask, but shipping, because I know that it depends where you are. Like, if you're in Alaska, it's the usual Alaska rules, same thing with Hawaii, which is a pain, but in the continental US, when you're getting things delivered by Amazon on the regular,
Yeah.
do they both come within, like, 1 to 3 days?
Stelo is faster.
Stella is faster.
Stelo is faster.
They
Yeah.
partnered with Amazon, I think,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, they did. Uh-huh.
for shipping.
Um, Yeah, and I don't think Lingo took excessively long, but I couldn't believe how fast I get the
I know.
Stelo. It's just like within a day or two. So
I
yeah,
got one overnight when I ordered the first one, because I was as soon as it came out, I ordered it and I got it the next day.
is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is nice,
Yeah.
so once you decide you're gonna do it, it's like, "All right, it's coming."
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then the Lingo does not come with an overpatch. So
Right.
the Stelo comes excuse my dog barking.
The Stelo
Uh,
comes and the dog barks when it's
yeah,
delivered.
yeah, maybe they're delivering one now. That's the only time my dog barks. But yeah, so there's no overpatch. There's no free overpatch with the Lingo. Um, but yet I still recommend it. I
Mhm.
recommend it to clients
Just for that
because
insurance.
yeah, I just think it's I don't know. For me, I don't like the feeling of it if it catches on something. And so
Mhm.
the overpatch really kind of just removes that whole issue
Yeah.
that you don't feel like it's going to catch. So of course
Tell
with
me, what overpatch do you like? Do you like the skin grips or do you like the transparent, smooth ones?
I've used both. I actually did get some clear, smooth ones for the Stelo, just because I wanted to see if it was different from the free ones
Mhm.
they provide. And I will say the ones on Amazon for the Stelo, just kind of the smooth, clear, are a little bit better than the free one that they provide.
Okay.
But
And
for
do they go all the
Lingo,
way over, or are they a donut?
they're a donut as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas the Lingo, the ones for Lingo, which is, whatever you buy, it's going to be for pretty much all the Abbott,
All the Abbott ones.
freestyle and the Lingo. And it completely goes over. And the
Mhm.
ones that I use are kind of the, sticky skin colored,
Mhm.
looks more like a giant band-aid, like
Yeah.
looks more like a fabric band-aid that goes
Yeah.
over. Um, and they're great. I mean, it, definitely lasts for the 2 weeks, and I don't worry at all about it catching or,
Yeah.
getting anything on it. Um, but yeah, so one thing doesn't come with a free overpatch, but once they're both on, in terms of the Stello versus the Lingo, they feel about the same.
But
It's even with the Lingo being slightly larger,
you
I
don't notice it back
don't
there.
really notice it. I
No.
wouldn't I wouldn't say that that's really a differentiator that would make people wanna choose one over the other.
Okay.
Um,
Well, what about the app? Tell me. See, I haven't used the Lingo app. I've had Amy, my coworker, she used
yeah.
the Lingo, but I haven't been able to. So tell me about the app and the
So
Lingo world.
this is where the biggest differences between the Stella and the Lingo. So Lingo has a very robust app. It's I would say maybe a little complicated for
Mhm.
people that are new, but it has a lot. So it kind of has two graphs. It has sort of an overview graph at the top that is somewhat similar to the Stello, and that it's just kind of a quick view of what
Mhm.
your glucose level is. And then you go down below, you kind of scroll down, and
Mhm.
it's sort of a more detailed graph.
Oh,
And it's that one down below that you can similar to the Stelo, you can touch your
use your
finger
finger and
and see what a previous glucose reading was.
okay.
And the graph down below is where they have the Lingo count,
The
which
Lingo count, yes.
is very different from Stelo. So yes, so Lingo has something called the Lingo count, um, which is basically a way of making data interpretation easier. So it's a calculation. It's an algorithm that calculates based on the size and the duration of a spike, and it's personalized to each person. So it really does look at what your data is, and then calculates this Lingo count, and then calculates a Lingo count target for you to have. So at the beginning of each day, it says this is your Lingo count target. And it could be, 17 to 29. It's going to be different for each person. You can then adjust that count. You can actually go in and say, no, I don't want a Lingo count of 29. I actually want my Lingo count to be 35,
Mhm.
um, which I think kind of makes it a little bit more complicated, to be honest, because I think it's difficult for people to kind of wrap their head around what the lingo count is to begin with, than
Right.
to take it a step further to adjust the lingo
But
count.
it is nice to be able to adjust it. Like, I'm in my head, when I've heard about this, but I didn't know you could adjust it. Like, when I'm working with, let's say I'm working with who we usually think of, somebody who has insulin resistance, prediabetes, or early type 2 diabetes, and especially if they have insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia, they need a tighter control
Yeah.
because, they have high insulin. And so we want a smaller lingo count to reverse that insulin resistance, bring insulin down. But if I'm working with somebody who's a competitive athlete and doing a lot of training, they're going to be fueling and they'll be able to tolerate higher blood sugar, especially with pre-fueling. And so I want to be able to allow for bigger glucose peaks for those fueling,
Mhm.
and to not worry about, like, if they're doing a really high intensity training session or something, we're going to see their glucose go up because of the exertion.
Right.
So, but that would allow us to adjust that lingo count
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
higher for them.
Now, the interesting thing though, so you can adjust the lingo count, but with lingo, you cannot adjust the target range.
Oh, you can't?
So lingo is automatically set to 70 to 140.
Okay.
So, which of course, it's just what it highlights, it
Mhm.
just
Yeah,
highlights that target range. So it's not that you can't go above that, but it's
right,
just from a readability perspective, it's
right.
a little bit more difficult. But that's what makes me think that, Abbott really designed lingo, I think, for people with prediabetes,
Mhm.
and probably, because they have other CGMs, other sensors,
Yeah,
that they would probably recommend people who have diabetes to use more of the Freestyle Libre.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, so interesting that yeah, you can adjust the lingo count, but not the overall target range.
So in that second, so there's that top thing where you can look and you scroll down and you get the more detailed. Do they kind of give you any, like, area under the curve? Do
Well,
they
they do it with lingo count. So they when you have a spike, it
Mhm.
highlights the whole area. So really it
Okay.
is kind of the area under
Eh,
the curve.
and
And then
so each individual spike gets a score based on its
yep,
area under the curve?
yep, and it literally labels it what the lingo count is for that
Okay,
for that spike.
that's handy.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, I assume you can log meals and events
Yep.
in there?
Yep. And they
Does the
show up
A Huh?
and those meals show up on the graph. So different
And they
cons
show up on the graph on your app.
yeah.
So, does the AI that's in that app, will it go and tell you, these are your best meals based on the curve and what you entered? Or is that up to you to do in your own head?
That's up to you. It's up to you, at least from what I've seen so far in
Mhm.
using it.
Yeah.
Which the interesting thing is that Lingo does ask you. There is an area of the app where you can go in and put preferences for what things you like to eat, what types of snacks you like to eat.
Mhm.
Do you tend to crave sugary snacks or salty, savory snacks? So you can put that in, sort of thinking that that's going to somehow personalize the process. I
Mhm.
didn't see that. Maybe that's something that they're going to develop further
Mhm.
in the future. But right now, you can go in and kind of put those personal details.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
That's really and then my other so if it's doing all this, is there a way where you can, like, log, like, if you didn't sleep well or if you were sick, to factor that in?
Yeah, so you can put in, sort of other, besides food and exercise, you can put
Mhm.
in kind of other, details.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But
so,
that just kinda just for your reference,
yeah,
that right. But still, that's nice that you can see that, because even in, like, the Freestyle Libre, when we were using those, just with its own free app, and with the Stelo, you can't see what you've logged in the app. You have to go and look at the back end, whether it was Libre
right,
View for the Freestyle Libre or
right.
Clarity for the Dexcom. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's got that. The other area where Lingo it just is much more robust in terms of their app is, with the Stelo, they have an area called Learn,
Mhm.
and with Lingo, they have sort of two areas. They have one called Challenges and then another called Discover. So the Challenges area is literally set challenges that you can do. So you can do a challenge of getting enough protein in a day, a challenge of trying to not consume as much alcohol in a day. So it really kind of takes you through what to do for a specific challenge in order to affect your blood sugar for that
Neat.
topic area. So that's kind of interesting. And then their Discover area is really extensive as well. That would be a package delivery. That's a package delivery, Mark.
I have a question. Um, what about old data? So when you're using, so like this is two-part. When you're using the Lingo and you want to look back, what was it like last week? Can you look back a week?
Yep, all from the app. Just by going up, there's a little drop down
Uh-huh.
date, and you just push the arrow, and you can go back to whenever you want.
Can you look back a month to like 2 sensors back? So
Yeah.
all of your data goes into the cloud in one area, and as long as
Yeah.
you're logging in as with your same account.
Yes. Yeah.
Which
Even
makes
now,
me think it's got a back end. Why aren't they connecting this with LibraView?
I know. I mean, I would think that they would.
That would be my go-to. If they would just do that, it would be my go-to. And if they
Yeah.
did it for Android.
Yeah.
Because let's go to the other thing. Right now, the Lingo is only available for Apple
Only
phones.
available for iPhone. Yeah, that is its
iPhone.
biggest con, I would say.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if you have an Android, you're stuck with Stelo for right now.
Don't say stuck.
Yeah.
We're making good use of the Stelo. Okay.
Yeah. So
So,
yeah. In fact, I was going to say, even with Lingo, even when so that I'm not using a CGM right now, I can still go into my app and I can look at my blood sugar data from when I
you
did.
can.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't have
If you
a
don't have
CGM on with a
Stelo,
Stelo,
you're out.
you can't even look at the app. You're locked out.
Yep. Yep. So I can still go into Lingo now and see old
Yeah.
data. So yeah.
And
So
this is when I was talking to the folks from Stelo or folks from Dexcom at a conference, they did, they said, well, this is the first round, we're taking suggestions for our updates and what we're going to do.
yeah.
So hopefully,
Yeah.
gosh, Julene, you and I could make the best CGM.
I know. I know. Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting, yeah, to kind of see how they each design these and what they're thinking
Mhm.
customers want. I mean, definitely Abbott was thinking, even though Lingo is over the counter, they're thinking people want to be able to, really dive into this and learn a bunch.
Mhm.
I'm not sure that's what people are doing with it. At least
They
not
were
on
going
these.
for functionality. Dexcom was going for simplicity and maybe simplicity and resting on the fact that Clarity was in the background doing
Yes.
all the we already have this really well developed back end through Clarity. So let's just make something simple because why we don't have to do all the extra stuff.
And I think it's really smart. And by doing that, maybe that enabled them to have it compatible with both iPhone and Android, so uh,
quickly.
and quickly. So they really broadened their reach,
Yeah.
from the get-go. So yeah, so definitely a very Lingo, very robust app, which is, why I would really think, when you first trying CGM, even though Lingo is easier to get just one, I think the simplicity of Stelo just makes it great for a first time user.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are we going to call this? Is this a lightning round? I want to go, okay, let's go through and compare which one's better.
Okay.
Dexcom or Stelo, only one answer. And
Okay.
then we'll go certain situations. This is better. And then our overall pick.
Okay.
I don't know if we can do an overall pick.
Sure,
So,
let's try it.
What are we doing? Pricing. Let's do price first.
Pricing, Lingo is better overall. Because Lingo has a better subscription, um, you can get 6 sensors for $249, I think it is. That brings the price down to $41.50.
Oh,
That's the cheapest CGM cost you can get of the two, for an
okay.
over-the-counter CGM.
Because
So
buying one at a time versus otherwise they're the same price, like 49 versus 99 for two.
yeah, the
But I
best
didn't know you could get
on
6. Okay,
Stelo
so
is $44.50. With their subscribe and save option on Stelo, yeah, it's $44.50. Whereas the best price you can get on Lingo is $41.50. So, saving of $3.
if you buy 6. Okay, so price, Lingo.
Price Lingo.
Compatibility.
Oh, definitely Stelo.
Definitely
Yeah.
Stelo. Right
Yeah.
now, for now,
Yeah.
until Abbott comes out. They will come out on Android. There's no way they're not going to come out on Android.
Yeah.
Both of these guys are still on phase 1.
For sure.
Okay. So that's one for Stelo and one for Lingo. Data management and sharing.
Ooh, so I almost look at those as two things. Data management is probably better on Lingo, but sharing is all about Stelo.
Okay, that's 2 categories. Data management, better on Lingo,
Yeah.
and sharing is 100% Stelo because it's the only one you can share data with another person like a practitioner. Gosh, okay.
Support.
Have you used support for Lingo?
Yeah, so Lingo is fantastic. They have, I think it's 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, a dedicated email and dedicated phone number for
Oh,
Lingo.
it is not the same as Freestyle Libre. It's a completely different department.
Just for Lingo.
Well, okay, then they win.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good support there.
Okay, so special categories. We've kind of already done this. For a brand new person, doesn't know anything, okay, maybe low tech, doesn't know anything about blood sugar, first time into this.
I'd say Stelo. Yeah, for 2 reasons. One, well, multiple reasons actually. One, it's easy to apply. It's an easy interface, just,
Mhm.
simple, easy to understand what's going on very quickly. And the fact that it connects to a healthcare provider, that you can share your data with a healthcare
Yeah.
provider, there is a very good chance when you start using a CGM, as we know from our business, that you're going to need assistance. You're going to
Yeah.
need help in understanding how to change your diet, what are really the drivers, and how to use it. And even though it's
gosh.
simple, it's so
And how
being
many times have you got on with somebody who's been using a CGM for some time? Even I've got people who've been using something like Levels, and one call where they're sharing their data and we go over it and they understand it. And it's so nice to be able to share their data.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think for that reason, that first time person, Stelo is going to be your better bet.
Okay. Tech savvy DIYer, someone who's like, I love tech. I know how to use my phone. I can download all that, I can really do it. I want to just do it all my own.
Yeah. Then I would say Lingo.
Lingo. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have an iPhone.
I'm sorry.
And you have an iPhone.
And you have an iPhone. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you have an iPhone and that's you, it's all there. It's all there on your phone. And it's not only a CGM, it's an education process. The Lingo just provides so much info, the challenges, all the discovery, it even provides recipes. So yeah, there's a lot there. It can be a little overwhelming, but if you're that type of person and you're ready to really dive in and take the bull by the horns, then you're gonna love it.
Okay. Are we able to say, do you have an overall favorite?
It's really tough. I think it's really conditional on whether you're a first time user versus a more experienced user.
Mhm.
And it depends if, if you're price sensitive, and I think there's a lot of factors there,
Yeah.
how comfortable you are with technology, how comfortable you are with the whole process. Um, Definitely Stelo is just kind of that basic, simple, will get you up and running really quickly. Whereas Lingo, you know, more complicated, but able to get more information and cheaper in the long run.
In the long
Lingo,
run.
if you're going to be using a CGM, which certainly, we do have clients that really need to be using it probably, once a month or at least once every
Mhm.
couple of months. If that's going to be you, then the price, and you're price sensitive,
Mhm.
then the price savings on Lingo really, really does pay off.
Yeah.
And being a subscription, it'll automatically send it to you, so you don't have to worry about managing that, whereas Stelo, you're just gonna get, 2 at a time.
Yeah. Now, if people, obviously, if people want to learn more about this, this is the kind of support that both you and I provide.
Yep.
But you've got a new program that you've got a little pocket program for
Yeah,
people trying to learn, like, which CGM should I get? How should I get myself set up if I'm brand new at this? Tell me about this program you've got.
yeah, so it's gonna be launching in January, and it's called CGM Jumpstart. So it's for the person that is interested in CGMs but doesn't know where to start. Which one do I choose? And then once they do choose it, how do I apply it to my arm? How do I read the data? What does data even mean? What should I be looking at on a daily basis?
Which is
And
kind of
then,
like what everybody needs to know when they first start out.
yeah, exactly. So it's kind of just a quick video series that provides a jump start. That really
Mhm.
just kind of gets you into the game, removing all the questions that many people have,
Yeah,
and being able to jump right in.
great. So if you guys are interested in this, we'll link to this in the down below in the show notes. Um, and then you have a good blog post on this too, don't you?
Yes, yeah. So I've got individual blog posts on both the Stello and the Lingo, and
Mhm.
and I'll probably be doing a comparison one, because I'm going to
Yeah,
be doing a YouTube kind of general comparison, Stello versus Lingo. That'll be coming out at the beginning of the year too.
good.
So yeah.
Okay, well, we'll link to those. If people want to follow you, how can people find you? Where's the
So
best
two
place?
places. So on YouTube, I am the pre-diabetes coach.
The Prediabetes
The
Coach.
pre-diabetes coach, and I'm actually the same on Instagram. So
Okay,
you can find me there. My website is montgomerynutrition.com, and you can see all my programs there. And of course, I do private coaching as well.
great. Good. And we'll have those links in the comments and the show notes so you can find Julene, who is a dear friend of mine and a colleague. And I always love talking to you. You're always the person I love to bounce these things off of.
Likewise, likewise. It's always fabulous talking with you.
All right. All right. Well, thanks again. Thanks for your time. And hopefully we'll do this again soon.
All right, sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Bye, Julene.
Okay, bye bye.